During this module, we'll look at today's networked economy and its relationship to competitive intelligence strategies. We'll also explore the concept of the dream society, what some believe will be the new techno-economic system for the world. I hope you agree that it is clear real power is shifting to customers. Not simply because customers have more choices, better information about products and services, and better access to suppliers. It is shifting not just because marketplace friction is disappearing and customers can switch suppliers with little effort and cost. Rather, it is shifting because consumers of the network world expect relationships that are two-way, one-to-one, and many-to-many. They want access to value that is distributed and highly malleable. The changing nature of value shifts power to consumers. Customers, not just suppliers, increasingly create value by drenching products with their knowledge. Customers can enhance their power by deconstructing value and reconstructing it from multiple suppliers, as in the example of newspapers. Ultimately, customers are becoming markets of one, requiring highly differentiated service and in turn moving the locus of power closer to themselves. Moreover, consumers are acquiring powerful new shopping and purchasing tools, which lightly outweigh the data mining and database marketing tools of suppliers. Sometimes called softbots, no-bots, or just bots, these software robots are personal assistants owned and controlled by the internet user. They get to know you and your preferences and your sense of style. They are tireless little workers that surf the net for you day and night, looking for information you've requested, evaluating the veracity of a vendor's marketing message, finding that perfect chocolate chip cookie, evaluating new movies based on your preferences and the opinions of others, comparing prices of sport utility vehicles, organizing your personalized daily newspaper, and doing other jobs. As John McDonnell said, new technologies equip the hunted with better camouflage. Perhaps turning the tables completely, the hunter becomes the hunted. John Hagel and Jeffrey Raport have examined an interesting side of this shift, the coming battle for consumer information. They argue that consumers are going to take ownership of the information that is available about them and begin demanding value in exchange for it. As a result, companies will have to manage their relationship with customers to ensure cost-effective access to this information. All of this emphasizes customer relationships as opposed to brand images alone. We'll see more of this in a moment. What this means is that a focus on profit and market share is no longer sufficient to provide growth. Today, customers have to be the center of the concern. The question is, how do we build this concept into our operations? One approach is called the service profit process. This approach offers a structural means to evaluate the significant contributions to customer satisfaction. It provides a focus to assess the investments that develop service and satisfaction levels for maximum competitive impact. The service profit process establishes the relationships between profitability, customer loyalty, and employee satisfaction, loyalty, and productivity. The steps or propositions of the process are: 1. Profit and growth are stimulated primarily by customer loyalty. In some service industries, like software and banking, customer loyalty is a more important determinant of profit than being the largest organization. 2. Customer loyalty is a direct result of customer satisfaction. Do you know if your customers are satisfied? Do you know why? 3, customer satisfaction is largely influenced by the value of services provided to customers, and the value can only be determined by the customer. 4, the value the customer wants, the results they receive in relation to their total costs, both the price and other costs customers incur in acquiring the service. Research shows is created by satisfied, loyal, and productive employees. 5, employee satisfaction results primarily from high-quality support services and policies that enable employees to deliver results to customers. Again, research has established that employee productivity drives value, that employee loyalty drives productivity, that employee satisfaction drives employee loyalty, and internal quality drives employee satisfaction. The success of the service profit chain is based on leaders who maintain a culture centered on service to customers and fellow employees. They display a willingness and ability to listen. Successful managers spend a great deal of time with customers and employees, experiencing their company's service processes while listening to employees for suggestions for improvement. Successful leaders know the answer to 2 key questions and have the data to back them up. 1, are my customers satisfied, and do I know why? And 2, are my employees committed to our mission and objectives, and do they receive feedback on their progress? The networked economy demands an organization focus more on its vision and its products than it does on its mission. That is why Robert Kaplan and David Norton's balanced worksheet system has become so popular in recent years. This process supports the service profit concept by assessing how effectively an organization's vision provides total value for its customers. Their approach combines both financial and operational measures into an integrated system of performance indicators and is comprised of 4 elements. 1, the financial perspective. This asks, if we succeed, how will we look to our shareholders? The assessment focuses on profitability, growth, and shareholder value. The second is the customer view. It asks, to achieve our vision, how must we look to our customers? The answer is based on assessments of time, quality, performance, and cost of ownership. That is, the total costs to the customer. Third is the internal operating perspective. The question is, to delight our customers, what management processes must we excel at? Here, the data looks at cycle time, quality, productivity, and anything else the customers may require. And the fourth is innovation and learning perspective. Here you ask, to achieve our vision, how must the organization continuously learn, improve, and create value? This perspective focuses on innovation, continuous learning, intellectual assets, and best practices. As the world's economy has grown, it has also become more complex and competitive. The explosion in information and communications has created a demand for continuous creativity and innovation. The rules of intellectual property are under stress, and much of that stress stems from the changes in business relationships that the new economy has created. Not long ago, proprietary and integration were the buzzwords of business. We wanted to keep everything internal. Now organizations find it more beneficial to focus on what they do best and get someone else to perform the subsidiary functions. This strategy has pushed organizations into complicated and novel relationships with one another. We are simultaneously competitors, suppliers, customers, partners, enemies, and allies. We don't have a good name for this activity. Partial integration has been used. Strategic partnership is another. Co-opetition has become popular. Harvard professor Lester Thurow describes it as competitive cooperative. It is this complexity and flurry of new arrangements for meeting customer demand that has led many to master benchmarking. Benchmarking is defined as a continuous, systematic process for evaluating the products, services, and work processes of organizations that are recognized as representing best practices for the purpose of organizational improvement. There are many reasons for doing benchmarking, but the 4 best reasons are satisfying your end-user customer requirements, establishing vision and goals based on a clear view of the external conditions, determining the true measures of productivity, and identifying the industry's best practices. There are lots of models for benchmarking, but perhaps the simplest is a 4-phase model which consists of 4 steps: establishing a plan, conducting a benchmarking study, diagnosing what you have learned, and internalizing the results and taking action. For more information, I would refer you to my book on the subject, The Manager's Guide to Benchmarking. Now, I want to change direction a little, and a lot. For the balance of our time, I want us to keep in mind what we have discussed this morning, but at the same time, let our imaginations take it a few steps forward. I ask that you be open and let yourself get out of the box, as we say in brainstorming. First, please consider this. In today's consumer society, we have become the human equivalents of a convenience store. With mobile phones in our pockets, Palm Pilots in our hands, and beepers on our belts, we are technologically on call 24 hours a day, and our sense of time and well-being is under attack. Response time has imploded with the fax machine, mobile phone, and email. Time is collapsing, crunching, and compressing. In recent years, there's been a shift from living in what John Nesbitt calls high-touch time to high-tech time. Today, technology is a self-perpetuating engine that accelerates our lives and inspires our desires for frequent fantasies of relief. In contrast to the language of high-touch time, phrases today communicate a sense of urgency. Phrases like lack of time, quick time, real time, deadline, checklist, multitask, finding time, making time, losing time, filling time, killing time, spending time, wasting time, on time, out of time, time frame, fast forward. Tranquility is a word little used today. Stress seeds our vocabulary, and we dream of tarrying on a sandy beach or savoring a sensuous meal far away from our daily lives. Time is measured in 2 ways, seasonally and celestially. Changes in the season is known as cosmic time. For most of human history, the changing of the seasons was how humans measured time. It was a cyclical perception, time repeating itself. It wasn't until around 1300 that people began to perceive a future, a possibility of change. In the 15th and 16th centuries, English and Portuguese explorers turned to the stars to establish a means for navigation, and celestial measured time was invented. This is what our watches and calendars show us. By this celestial measure, the future arrives at the speed of 60 minutes an hour, one day at a time. But out-of-the-box time can be more subjective. As we approach January 1st, 2000, we can ask ourselves if it will be a day like any other. If not, what is different? The answer is that as the first day of a new year, a new millennium at that, this day has built into it a dream. It is a dream about taking stock. Therefore, most of us will assess what we achieved in the past year and ask, what do we have to show for it? We'll do this for ourselves, our companies, our nation, and if we're lucky, as a humanity. We'll look back and ask, have we yielded a profit? Are we happy? Are we prosperous? But this dream is also about the future, a new year, a new millennium, replete with new possibilities, new goals. So the dream is also about settling old accounts and opening new ones. It can be exciting and it can be challenging. But first, a caution. As we look to the future and what changes it holds for us, it is wise to remember that different people hold different views of time and change. Let's look at some of these people. There are the Neo-Luddites. This is a group that reacts negatively to anything new. They are against it. They point to the risks and they see frightening perspectives. These modern-day Luddites may in fact be more numerous than their predecessors in the English factories at the dawning industrial age. These are people who show a marked skepticism about things like biotechnology, the internet, escalating consumption, and new technology in general. They believe things were better before. Then there are the deniers. This is the large group that is oriented toward the present and declines to contemplate the future. To them, the present is what counts. And besides, the future will probably turn out to be more or less like the present anyway. When asked about the future, a denier might reply, well, this fall will be my silver anniversary with the company. The last group is the early adapters. These are the people oriented toward the future. They can't get enough change and they can't get it fast enough. They welcome all things new as an opportunity rather than as a risk. They are the first to buy new products, the first to use new technology. For their vacations, they always seek out new destinations. So as we move to a new millennium, we should probably be cautious of two things. First, do I know how the people around me think about the future? Will they be my companions, my helpers, or my keepers as we move inexplicably forward? Second, do I want to know what happens after what comes next? That last question is key if we are to be open to understanding the plausible trends of the future. It is a question that I first heard asked by Watts Wacker, who was the resident futurist at the Stanford Research Institute. He often asked that questions of his audience before providing his assessment of what he believes are the most probable directions of life beyond the year 2000. Watts calls this assessment the Dream Society. And here are his forecasts. 1, in philosophy, the absorption of paradox. He feels that the ability to hold two mutually contradictory thoughts simultaneously will be a survival skill in the 21st century. With the rate of change accelerating at an unprecedented, unfathomable speed, everyone will need to create multiple and often diametrically opposed visions of the future to be prepared for what's coming next. 2, the dominant physical structure, theme parks. There are already 500 theme parks in the United States today, and as the year 2000 approaches, we can only expect a growing desire to opt out of the stress of everyday life for a Truman Show version of reality, causing an exponential increase in the number and size of theme parks. Disney Hong Kong and the expansion plans of Magic Mountain near Los Angeles are two recent announcements to support this view. 3, the dominant resource, intellectual property. As we discussed, this is already happening. We already live in an age of knowledge workers. The next step is an era where knowledge is more valuable than the goods being transacted. To put it another way, it's not the machines that are valuable, but the code that runs them. 4th, the dominant metaphor, fusion. We see it already in cuisine. French, Chinese, Tex-Mex, and Asian Hawaiian restaurants in nearly every major city of the world. And we see it in the melding of the life and social sciences to form such disciplines as bionomics and evolutionary anthropology. Expect more of this as geographical boundaries collapse and the world itself becomes one massive multicultural melting pot. 5, rituals. Individuality and uniqueness. The citizens of Apple's Macworld will relentlessly continue to seek individualization. Or as Watts put it, the more we become the same, the more we'll crave minute points of differentiation. 6, travel. Telepresence. The ability to be in more than one location at the same time. Think video conferencing and cellular video phones. Can beam me up, Scotty, be very far behind. The 7th, interaction. Neo-tribes, as he calls it. As people continue to lose their identification with particular nationality or religious group, more and more they will identify themselves through common interests, which are focused on icons and rituals. Harley-Davidson is a company building their business around this idea. 8, work will be spiritual. Workers of the Dream Society aren't looking for just a paycheck. They desire an alignment of beliefs that will allow their working lives to reconnect with their personal lives. Forget the mission. After the year 2000, it's all about vision and the journey. 9th is defining activity, turning dreams to reality. Perhaps an extreme example of this is British Airways buying a decommissioned space shuttle for trips into outer space in 2005. If we can imagine it today, we can probably buy it tomorrow. In the time we have left, I want to focus on Watt's notion of satisfying our dreams in work and the products we purchase and buy. Because the Dream Society, I believe, will have a profound impact on our organizations and our lives. In today's information society, we prize those who can skillfully manipulate data. According to Rolf Jensen, the director of the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies and a strategic consultant to over 100 global companies, in tomorrow's Dream Society, we will reward those who can finesse language and stir the emotions. I call it revenge of the liberal arts major. In the commercial sphere, the value of products will depend on the story those products tell. It will no longer be only price or convenience determines which product someone buys, but also the theme behind the product. The same will be true in the cultural and political realms. The information society will never die, but as we become accustomed to faster, better, and more complete access to knowledge, data, technology, society will increasingly need a new and broader outlet for emotional and psychological needs. This is the foundation of the Dream Society. The huge increases in our current material wealth owes much to science and technology. But in the future, attention will turn away from science toward non-materialistic, non-scientific values. The highest paid person in the first half of the next century will be the storyteller. The value of products will depend on the story they tell. That is where the money is, even today. Today, corporate strategy sessions are increasingly about storytelling, not manufacturing. For example, our heroes at the Olympic Games next summer in Sydney will be those telling the most magnificent stories, and they will be paid very well for it later. The existence of stories will be taken for granted, but much more value will be placed on the relevance of the content of that communication. 500 television channels offering nothing but reruns of old shows will not be accepted. People who can produce highly imaginative new programs will be in greater demand, as will innovative CD-ROM creators, musicians and composers, actors, artists, journalists, and other storytellers. Just as information manipulation is a valued skill in so many occupations today, storytelling will be a key skill in a wide range of professions, from advertiser to teacher, to business entrepreneur, to politician, to religious leader. Each will be valued for his or her ability to produce dreams for public consumption. Two trends in today's society are particularly important in the transformation ahead. The first trend is the automation of information tasks. Just as industrial tasks have been automated, clerical work such as typing letters, entering data, and adding and subtracting sums has been turned over to machines like computers, photocopiers, and telephone answering machines. Now professional expertise, the tasks of lawyers, doctors, and engineers, is being turned over to artificial intelligence. Human senses are also being automated so that electronic devices can hear, see, and feel, thus further reducing the need for human workers in traditional jobs. Electronic sensors now can detect toxic fumes in factories. Motion detectors spot burglars, and answering machines hear as well as speak. We still need human experts to supervise and be available, just as we want a pilot on our airplane, even if the airplane is automated. But the role of the human worker will be increasingly limited to being present for the unexpected and to comfort the passengers. As soft knowledge such as courtesy and manners is automated over the next quarter century, routine functions of all kinds will disappear. Fast food restaurants, for example, will be automated. You will order by computer, and your food will be prepared and delivered into your hands by robots. Computers will also serve you in retail stores, in banks, and at airport ticket counters. Humans will be needed only to make changes to the automated systems. The second trend is the commercialization of emotions. As I touched on earlier, it will no longer be enough to produce a useful product. A story or legend must be built into it, a story that embodies values beyond utility. This imperative is already occurring with more and more products. People buy blue jeans, for instance, not only to cover their bodies. Most of the money they pay for is the story that goes with the product. A story of independence, youth, power, and perhaps traditional or non-traditional values. Similarly, when shoppers buy eggs laid by free-range hens, much of the money they pay is for the hen's lifestyle. People pay an additional 15 to 20% because of the story behind the eggs. A story about animal welfare, of rustic romanticism, or about the good old days. How does an organization build a theme or a story into its business and product? Let's look at some examples of how it is being done and how it can be done. The market for athletic footwear is worth $7 to $8 billion in the United States alone. Nike is the current market leader because it is skillful at attaching a story to a pair of sneakers. It is a dream society company. Nike works from the basic tenet that the issue is not athletic footwear, but a story of youth, success, and fame. Wear Nike and you too will triumph. As a global company, is Nike able to tell its story across linguistic and cultural borders? They think so. They paid $400 million for the right to sponsor the Brazilian national soccer team, and they certainly expect a return on their investment. The traditional English and American motorcycle makers, Norton, Triumph, Royal Enfield, BSA, and of course Harley-Davidson, although illustrious and venerable, all lost out to the Japanese competition during the 1970s. The Japanese cycles offered better means of transportation, cheaper, faster, and demanding of less maintenance. But the English and the Americans have made a comeback, led by Harley-Davidson. Why? Because motorcycles are ceasing to be a means of transportation and are instead a statement of lifestyle, adventure, and speed. Technology excellence is still expected, but it has become secondary to the story. If you doubt this, then look at the number of people riding hogs and BSAs and wearing Harley-Davidson t-shirts and jackets. The story of the Titanic is another example of dream society. The story of humanity's highs and lows has been told over and over again in books, musicals, and movies. It is a challenge for us to wonder how we ourselves would have acted given the horror that faced the survivors and the 1,600 who perished on that night 87 years ago. The story holds so much fascination and respect by people throughout the world that Jensen even suspects that the Titanic will be rebuilt and relaunched in 2012, the centennial of the dramatic shipwreck. Of course, with the stipulation now that its safety be impeccable. In Mexico, Ricardo Salinas has built a small empire based on bringing modern technology and entertainment to the low-income population, persons earning less than $700 a month. His story is the opportunity to participate in the good life. Grupo Electra is a chain of retail stores that sell TVs and other appliances for very low weekly payments, although the interest rates are very high, and Salinas claims they will come down when the volume goes up. Salinas also has launched Viper, a paging company that targets the same population using slogans like, "Your message is safe." Recently, he launched Unifon to provide local wireless telephone service for very low startup and monthly fees. Although his efforts are controversial, the value of storytelling is not lost on Salinas' advertising efforts, which are carried on Electra's own TV station, Azteca. Another example is the Orient Express. This famous train no longer operates as a means of transportation between Istanbul and Central Europe, but rather as a dream society train of old world charm, champagne and caviar, romance and sightseeing. The tickets are not cheap, upwards of $4,000 for a one-way trip from Istanbul to Venice, but the romance and charm cost more than the transportation. And it may very well serve as a model for other train service in the 21st century. Jensen believes the future dream society will become the fifth techno-economic system, with the information system giving way to this new society based on dreams, adventure, spirituality, and feelings. If the dream society advocates are correct, when our future grandchildren look back on our age, they will see it as dull and gray, dominated by technology and neglecting human values. They will understand that we today could not yet free ourselves from our narrow focus on work, which we viewed simply as a means to pay for consumable goods and leisure. They may, however, wonder what it was like to live at a time when life was divided into little boxes of either work or leisure. Today, people still buy products mostly for their function. Non-materialistic reasons remain secondary. But within the next 25 years, what people buy may very well be mostly stories, legends, emotion, and lifestyle. Poverty would be redefined as the inability to satisfy more than one's material needs. By the year 2020, many regions of the world will probably still be poor compared with the developed nations. The difference in wealth may be just as great as it is today, but the key question is whether the developing countries will see themselves mainly as poor or as simply different. According to the World Bank, when the average income of a country reaches about $11,000 per capita, measured in purchasing power, it is a high-income country. Although that's still a long way from the U.S. average of $27,000 or Europe's $21,000. Still, by this reckoning, there are 25 high-income countries with a total population of 800 million. These are the people on the way to the Dream Society. Current forecasts expect Chile and the Czech Republic to reach 11,000 per capita level by year's end. Very likely these households will have 2 incomes, own a car, and a number of durable consumer goods. They will carry insurance and will travel abroad. And their children will have the possibility of higher education. And they will have knowledge of a foreign language. And they will no longer struggle to keep hunger at bay. Life will mean the possibility of saving and purchasing for other reasons than purely materialistic ones. They will be able to satisfy their emotional needs in their purchases. Between 2000 and 2005, the forecast for the high-income candidates are Argentina, Malaysia, and Thailand, provided they can sustain an annual growth of 4 to 5% and maintain stable social political conditions. The next group consists of Hungary, Mexico, Panama, and Colombia. With these spearheads, it is forecast that South America will become the next high-income area. Although there is some uncertainty through this scenario, we predict that between 2010 and 2020, South Africa, Russia, Poland, and Turkey will join the high-income category. Of course, countries of this size already have a large middle class, but the goal is a per capita target. By 2020, China and India should reach the high-income plateau. Of course, this is based on a country as a market assessment rather than a regional assessment. Certain regions and urban areas of both of these countries will have high-income populations long before 2020. But international statistics are broken down by country, not region. An educated guess is that by 2010, globally oriented companies will concentrate on 2 main areas, North America and Europe-Russia, followed by Latin America and China. At the moment, Western culture is gaining ground in many countries due to the global dissemination of information. In time, this could result in a global monoculture, with a world market for the same products, music, entertainment, and fashion. In this scenario, many cultures and philosophies would disappear. There is an alternative view, a global revival of cultures, with each tribe rediscovering its roots. Just as we today are trying to preserve biodiversity, we may find it valuable to preserve cultural diversity. For this to occur, a nation's culture will have to become more important than its gross national product. Which course the world takes will largely depend on which story holds the most satisfaction for its listeners. Why do we crave stories? From time immemorial, human beings have lived for and with myths, fairy tales and legends, communicated at first through an oral tradition as well as through images, and subsequently through the written world. We have always lived in a spiritual as well as physical world. Until the middle of the 20th century, our stories were confined by our clothing, our belongings, our homes, where we were born, and the standing into which we were born. Family and social tradition played a major part in the stories we were told and the stories we lived. But today, stories are no longer confined to one tradition. Regardless of age, profession, and nationality, we are free to tell any story through the products we purchase: clothes, transportation, leisure products, vacations, homes. So according to our financial status, we do just that. And that is why the market is gradually becoming emotionally defined. At the extreme, we could say that the product is becoming secondary to the emotion it conveys. Most Dream Society advocates identify 6 markets that will emerge. One is the adventures for sale: travel, cars, vacations, sporting equipment. The second is the market for togetherness, friendship, and love: telephone service, alcoholic drinks, bars, restaurants, sporting events, music, theme parks. Third, the market for care: daycare, care for the elderly, environment, charity work, volunteer work, contributions, health products, exercise. Fourth is the who I am market: clothes, cars, homes, hobbies. Fifth, the market for peace of mind: financial investments, books, magazines, movies, television. Sixth, the market for convictions: causes, ecology, human rights, ethics, genetic engineering. As you contemplate the opportunities that are emerging, consider this. There is an economy of scale in story marketing. The new communications thoroughfares present fierce competition. But reaching the households of the world's emerging middle class is becoming cheaper. In the digitized world of the future, a small enterprise, be it German, Japanese, or Mexican, may gain access to 1 billion potential customers through the internet. The challenge is that it be able to tell a good, appealing story. Stories have always been the key motivation in making a purchase, fixing a deal, and raising one's level of effectiveness in the world. We are seduced by stories, even more than by quality or by price. Apple is the story of outlaw computing. FedEx is the story of promises kept. In the future, leaders will have to become storytellers first and managers second. As the new millennium approaches, now less than 30 days away, I want to wish you a happy new century. And I wish for you that when you look to the future, that you will see the World Wide Web, the Internet, and the massive mountains of data waiting for electronic retrieval, not as a rising tide of causal information mongering, but as a global freedom to know. That you see a world in which for the first time in human history, caste or schooling or economic circumstance no longer limit access to knowledge, but instead give rise to a global freedom to go, a world in which global citizens will have true global mobility. That you see the collapse of corporate loyalties and the rise of deal-making as a global freedom to do, not in accord with professional processes or bureaucratic structures, but with one's own intuition and entrepreneurial zeal. That you see the new world as the opportunity to create one's own reality, a global freedom to be, whatever one wants to be, with the obligation to exercise that freedom. I hope with the new year you look on this landscape of the present and see not the abrogation of old freedoms, but the rise of new ones: to know, to go, to do, and to be. I hope you see the future as the dawn of the age of possibility. Franklin Roosevelt once said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." He was right. Thank you.